Good evening. We begin tonight with breaking news from Hay River, where extreme winds have overwhelmed firefighting efforts. Town officials have issued an emergency evacuation order for anyone still in the town, including essential workers. Wildfire crews have moved back to safety. Anyone left in Hay River needs to go to the airport for evacuation flights. The town says aircraft are standing by. They will fly you out. Fire officials say there is a threat to the town itself right now, but there are defenses in place. Mike Westwick is a fire information officer with the government of the Northwest Territories. Normally, we would have him live on the show, but with this ongoing situation in Hay River, we had to speak with him a little bit earlier tonight. He gave us an update from the Hay River Airport a little over an hour ago.
We're at the Hay River Airport. The fire had a blow-up event today on the north section. It was driven by these extreme southwest winds we've seen today, upwards of 50 kilometers an hour or more. And that overwhelmed firefighting efforts at a section in the north of the fire. We've got a kilometers wide front of flame that's moving parallel to the highway into Hay River. Now, wildfire crews and aircraft have been pulled back, repositioned to safe spaces. Non-essential personnel and people left in Hay River are being urged to evacuate to ensure their safety. They're being done so by air. We're coordinating closely with the town of Hay River and the Canadian Armed Forces on this. Now, I want to be clear, the town of Hay River has not been impacted yet. This is definitely a threat. It is not a certainty. There is a possibility that the fire under current conditions flanks away from town when it gets a bit closer, but we're not taking any chances here. The reality is it's a volatile situation. 10 kilometers or less away from town, this front of flame is, and it's critical we get people out. Now the next steps here, plans are being enacted for the event that the fire does encroach upon town. The town of Hay River has a plan for impingement, and they're starting up sprinkler systems, and we're doing everything they can to keep this place safe. And they're going to be working hard, so long as it's safe for the folks out here, to protect this community.
That was Mike Westwick, a fire information officer with the GNWT. He was at the Hay River Airport. Now, since we spoke to Mike, he has sent us some updated information. He says about 60 people left on the first flight out, and 30 to 40 vehicles left through the checkpoint on the highway heading south. Again, if you are in Hay River, you are being told to leave right now. You should head to the airport for an emergency flight out. And as we just heard from Mike, the situation in town is not safe. Firefighters are still there, but they have been moved to safer locations. That fire threatening Hay River right now is the same one that did this. It engulfed Enterprise nearly 2 weeks ago. These are new images from our CBC drone team of what's left of the hamlet. It is nothing short of devastating. Almost everything is gone. Juanita Taylor was on the ground in Enterprise. She will bring you that story on The National this weekend. Earlier today, NWT Premier Carolyn Cochrane visited the Evacuee Reception Centre in Calgary, where thousands of NWT residents have registered since the evacuations were called. She was there with the Premier of Alberta, whose province has welcomed many of us fleeing the fires. Madeline Cummings has that story.
The premiers of Alberta and the Northwest Territories toured a reception centre for wildfire evacuees in Calgary today. That city is one of the temporary homes for people who were forced to flee Yellowknife more than a week ago. Both premiers thanked Albertans for welcoming the more than 20,000 people who have temporarily settled here.
I am eternally grateful. I shall never forget the kindness and the support of Albertans. You've truly shown what it means to care for people, not just your own, but for all people. And that is the Canadian way. So thank you so much.
The Premier expressing gratitude, but also frustration with the federal government over the territory's infrastructure needs.
People were driving through our one road out with fire on both sides. The smoke was overcome, our communications went down. We have no redundancy. I couldn't get a hold of people.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau addressed her concerns during a visit to British Columbia this morning. He acknowledged that having only one highway to Alberta was a huge challenge as Yellowknife residents fled south.
That's part of the reflections we have to have going forward on how we can make sure that we have even more resilient communities.
Meanwhile, officials are expecting challenging firefighting conditions in the north, strong winds and hot, dry weather. Similar conditions were seen before the community of Enterprise burned down nearly 2 weeks ago. The town of Hay River warns the next 3 days will have an elevated fire risk. And near Yellowknife, crews are bracing for flare-ups and fire burning through the tops of trees. Madeline Cummings, CBC News, Edmonton.
We just heard from Carolyn Cochrane about what she has called the infrastructure gap that exists between the territories and the rest of the provinces. She had some harsh words for the federal government today. Here's what she said about that gap in full.
I can tell you that we've been facing issues with climate issues for a while. Our permafrost is melting, the Arctic Sea is melting, we have more ships coming in. These fires, I would love to say it was a one-time event, but I can't guarantee that. What I can say is that when we had to evacuate, not only me, we've been asking for the same infrastructure, roads, communications, that people in Canada take for granted for decades. When our community of Hay River started on fire, people were driving through our one road out with fire on both sides. The smoke was overcome, our communications went down. We have no redundancy. I couldn't get a hold of people. They couldn't know if they were safe, if they were evacuated or not. So I've been screaming for infrastructure for decades, all of us. Now we're talking about risks. 22 of our communities have no roads in, no permanent roads. And we all know if the smoke is there, you can't fly planes in. So if this happens, our season's not done, but if this happens next year, is it my fault? Whose fault is it when we can't get people out because we don't have basic infrastructure that every Canadian takes for granted? So I'm tired. I've been tired for a long time for asking for infrastructure, and now I'm angry. And I think that I'm not going to be able to do it alone. We've been arguing. I need every single Canadian to say it is not okay that the territories live like third world countries, that we do not have the same services that people in the South have. So please, everyone raise your voice, because I need the federal government to hear. We are Canadians, and we deserve the same. Thank you.
Many members of the Dene Nation in the Northwest Territories are affected by this mass evacuation, and they are scattered across multiple cities and towns in the country. Today, Dene National Chief Gerald Antoine spoke about the 4 pressing things people say they need.
One is a place to stay. Accommodation is really essential. The second one is food, that people need to be fed. The third one is the basic necessities, the basic essential needs of the family. And the fourth one is transportation. So if you look at those things, these are the 4 basic things that the community family needs.
So many communities are affected by the wildfires in the NWT that it's causing problems in places without evacuation orders. Nunavut is seeing the impacts right now as flights, mail, and cargo all see extended disruptions. Dustin Pitar has that part of the story.
Earlier this week, Canadian North introduced a modified schedule servicing communities in Western Nunavut. The airline has since extended that schedule beyond this weekend to September 4th. There are 2 new routes, a Kitikmeot East run between Iqaluit, Telojawak, Kugaruk, Johaven, and Cambridge Bay, and a Kitikmeot West run originating in Inuvik that services Uruktuk, Kuluktuk, and Cambridge Bay. Jet service will run between Iqaluit, Rankin Inlet, Edmonton, and Inuvik. The resumption of those flights also means that the mail service has returned to Cambridge Bay. The news comes after a week of no mail getting into or out of Kitikmeot communities. Canada Post says that emergency measures are being put in place that would route mail from Cambridge Bay to Johaven, Kugaruk, Kuluktuk, and Telojawak. At the same time, Canada Post has put nearly all Qikiqtaaluk communities on a yellow alert, meaning there will be mail delivery delays. This is because Canadian North's cargo facility in Iqaluit is currently at capacity, a situation the airline says has been intensified by the wildfires in the Northwest Territories. Until further notice, the airline is unable to offer cargo service to most Qikiqtaaluk communities except for essential medical supplies. Desmatar, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Nunavummiut are also among those who have been forced to flee, including one couple from Rankin Inlet. They were visiting family in Yellowknife when the evacuation order was announced. They say it led to a difficult journey home with no government support. The CBC's Emily Hawes has their story.
I had a big relief that, yeah, we're going home. Couple more stops and then home.
A weight was lifted for Hillary Turagok and Chris Richardson when they stepped on the tarmac to board a flight out of Yellowknife. The common-law pair traveled to Yellowknife to visit family, and when they were ordered to evacuate, they had booked a flight for Friday, but then learned it had been canceled. They couldn't follow the regular evacuation process to fly out because of Turagok's medical condition. Her panic attacks can cause seizures, meaning she couldn't handle large crowds. In the end, a friend secured them a smaller flight after the Friday deadline had passed.
If it weren't for the help of certain people, we wouldn't have gotten where we are now.
The couple have paid for their own hotels and meals and used Aeroplan points to go from Edmonton to Winnipeg and then to Rankin Inlet. They say they didn't qualify for support offered by Nunavut Tungavik or the government of the Northwest Territories because they are not residents of Yellowknife, while they said the government of Nunavut hasn't responded to them. Richardson says that if he could talk to those government officials, he wouldn't have a lot to say.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know what I'd say. I'd probably freak out. Be like, why didn't you guys help us? Like, we were a part of the evacuee crew. Like, we were on our own. As soon as we got to Edmonton, we were pretty much on our own. Like,
NTI says they have advised people in different situations, like visiting family, to contact the GN. The GN says people on personal travel should pursue NTI's funding or make a claim against their private travel insurance. It added it has made a donation to United Way NWT to help evacuees, including Nunavummiut in the region on personal travel. The GNWT didn't respond by deadline. Emily Hawes, CBC News, Iqaluit.
You just heard Hillary and Chris's evacuation story. It's one of many we've been sharing during this unprecedented wildfire season. And we have another for you right now of a woman who was ready when the order came because she's seen what happens when a fire grows out of control. Helen Malone Babineau evacuated Fort McMurray in 2016. And now, 7 years later, she was one of thousands who left Yellowknife.
In 2016, we were prepared days in advance. We were being warned, I don't know, maybe even as far as a week in advance, because they had started to evacuate further out on the city limits, right? So there were some places that had to evacuate earlier. So we had been prepared that an evacuation might be necessary. We at least had been told that, whereas in Yellowknife, there was no mention of evacuation until we were told to evacuate. I didn't wait for the evacuation order. I had the foresight to see what was happening in our community, in our city, and think to myself, you know what? I'm just going to go while the getting's good. So I actually left Yellowknife at 3 p.m. on Wednesday. For me, it was time to go. It was time to go. I couldn't understand why we had not been evacuated at that point. Yellowknife to Betchico was, I would say, very reminiscent of driving through Fort Mac, in the sense that everything was, burned and black, and there was a lot of little fires here and there, like no big fires. There was no big wall of fire. There was no flames jumping onto the road. So, I mean, in that way, it was, I didn't feel like I was in imminent danger, but it felt like, very eerie. Yeah. I'm worried about how long this is going to take and when we're going to be able to get back. And I'm also worried about how we'll feel about being back in a city that was not prepared for an emergency of this level. and is not taking care of its people now that we've been evacuated.
The Northwest Territories is not the only place experiencing evacuation orders right now. We heard from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in British Columbia a little earlier. He was in the Okanagan region to get an in-person update on the fires there. While some residents are now returning to their properties, there are still thousands who are displaced by fires raging in parts of the province. Renee Filipponi has that story.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau started his tour of the central Okanagan with a stop at the West Bank First Nation, one of the communities hit by the McDougall Creek fire that tore into the region a week ago. Nearly 4,500 people are still out of their homes, and hundreds don't have homes to go back to. Trudeau thanked firefighters and sent his sympathies to those who have lost everything. But he also acknowledged that lessons can be learned going forward.
There's a lot more to learn and there's a lot more to do. We know, unfortunately, extreme weather events are going to get more frequent, more extreme in the years to come, and we have to learn very much from what worked, also what didn't work as well as it could have, and put that in place.
There is frustration for many that it's taking too long to get back into their homes, but officials say they need to make sure neighborhoods are safe and want to prevent the need for evacuating a second time if things pick up again. With the cool weather and rain in recent days, crews have been able to get a handle on the fires and have used planned ignitions, deliberately burning fuel that could spark fires in the hot weather forecast this weekend.
Going into the next few days, however, we are expecting the weather to continue to be seasonal. So that's that warm temperatures, those dry conditions that you expect in August. With the potential for lightning in a couple of areas of the province. So while we'll take all the rain that we can get, we're certainly not out of the woods yet in terms of the weather conditions that we would like to really support bringing all those fires under control.
The other major fire in the province is the Bush Creek East fire in the North Shuswap. There is no timeline on when the thousands of evacuees will be able to go back home as crews continue to tackle that major fire. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
We know many people may be having a hard time finding our CBC North shows on TV and radio as we're all spread out across the country. If you are in touch with anyone who's looking for our coverage, you can let them know that Northbeat can be streamed on our website, cbc.ca/north, and you can also find it live at 6 p.m. Mountain Time on CBC Gem. Now, if you're looking for our radio shows, the Trailbreaker, Northwind, or Trails End, our NWT radio shows, and of course our Indigenous language shows, so crucial right now, you can find them on the CBC Listen app, or you can search online for CBC Radio Lite. You'll find our low bandwidth radio stations there. We told you yesterday about a construction boom in Old Crow, Yukon. Part of that is the first assisted living home for elders in the community. It's called the Victoria Blake Memorial Elders Home. It was named in memory of the elder whose cabin used to occupy the site of the new facility. Residents have yet to move in, but the CBC's Cheryl Kawaja had a chance to tour the home, and she takes us inside.
Before elders can move in, there are still some details to work out. Chief Pauline Frost says staff still needs to be hired and there's an oversight to fix. She says the place was built without a system of cool air exchange.
And so we want to make sure that the elders are comfortable and that we have an air exchange system in here set up through, and so each one of the units will have an air conditioning system set up, and that should arrive shortly.
The building includes common space, but each of the 9 units is self-contained, some with views of the Porcupine River.
We're a community that is, our capacity is somewhat compromised and given our remoteness. The intention here is to provide opportunities for seniors to move into the facility that are independent, so independent living models with some supports available.
The chief says there is interest among elders in the community. A few applications have already been submitted, and she notes a couple of rooms are set aside for elders who want to fly home for a visit.
We have 2 units set aside that are transient units, meaning that we have 400 citizens living in Whitehorse. We have 200 I believe it's 280 in community. So we have a lot of citizens outside of outside of community that want to come home and spend some time here, but have not been able to do that just given the shortages of accommodations. So this frees up that worry for them and an opportunity for them to just come home.
The chief hopes everything will be in place for elders to move in within the month. Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Old Crow.
An exhibit at the Art Gallery of Ontario is offering a unique look at the everyday items that have become iconic in Nunavut and across the north. The CBC's Dustin Pitar has more.
From China Lily soy sauce to Crosby's molasses, Let's Go Quick Stop by multidisciplinary artist Tuckalik Duffy is as much a celebration of contemporary Inuit culture as it is a nostalgic look back at her childhood in Coral Harbor.
Let's Go Quick Stop. It's an extension of the work I've already been doing, I suppose, which is I focus a lot on everyday objects from Nunavut, and especially items that are very clear in my memory. Like I forget a lot of things and my memory can sort of be wishy-washy, but there's certain things that just never go away. But yeah, it's inspired by that, what's up, and I guess just being home and what that means to be home and what these products mean in our lives.
It's an idea that also resonated with Tuckalik Partridge. She's the gallery's associate curator of Indigenous art and originally from Kuujjuaq.
For me, when I do exhibitions with Inuit artists, my first interest is always in promoting the artist and having them have the experience and the opportunity to grow their career. And also, I want people to feel welcome and to feel, especially Inuit, to feel like they see themselves reflected in these spaces that are not necessarily made for us.
Much like the objects that Duffy illustrates and sews, her inspiration also comes from closer to home.
A lot of people assume, oh, Andy Warhol, or they attribute that, but truly my first inspiration for like everyday objects in Nunavut is Annie Putugok. I remember it's on my bookshelf, one of my treasured books, but I remember just going through it, and each time I have a moment like that where it sort of obliterates your sense of what art should be or could be.
Let's Go Quick Stop is on exhibit at the Art Gallery of Ontario in Toronto until June 2024. Duffy's next exhibit, Gasoline Rainbows, opens at the Winnipeg Art Gallery Kamayuk on September 22nd. Her work can also be found on Instagram at Tuckalik Duffy. Dustin Pitar, CBC News, and Iqaluit.
As many evacuees will tell you, there's been no shortage of kindness across Alberta during this time. William Chixie is a hairstylist in Yellowknife. He's now returned to his alma mater to offer free haircuts to evacuees. MC College is a hair and aesthetic school in Edmonton. The CBC Trailbreaker host Hillary Bird stopped by for a trim.
Okay, Will, what are we doing here?
Well, Hillary's got curly hair, so what she needs is some length to be able to put it up. So basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through her hair, and I'm actually gonna straighten her, blow dry and smooth her hair out, and then I'm gonna dry cut her curls.
So you're originally from Inuvik. You live in Yellowknife.
Yeah.
Why was doing this so important to you?
I think it's always, as hairstylists, or barbers or anyone of the industry, we serve. And it's important to give back. And I mean, a time like this is very stressful for a lot of people to be evacuated from their homes. So I reached out to MC College and I let them know that, hey, we've got a huge opportunity here to help a lot of people. So here we are.
And so what has this been like for you, this evacuation?
Stressful, I would say, but on the most part, I mean, I'm very fortunate because I lived in Edmonton for many years. I mean, I just moved up there 2 years ago from Edmonton, so I have a lot of friends and family in the area.
What are you hearing from evacuees when you tell them that they can come and get free?
I think that, you know, a lot of them are very thrilled to get an opportunity to honestly just get out of the hotel and maybe not think of, you know, potentially what's going on back home and letting the day-to-day stresses of being evacuated bother them.
It's really nice. You forget about your worries for a little bit. Yeah, just even there, I just got my head massaged. They were washing my hair, and I was like, you know, you forget about your stresses just for that time, and it means so much.
And so what was MC College, what was their reaction when you said you wanted to offer this?
They were thrilled. They were excited. I mean, they're always willing to help, right? So they were thrilled. They were more than pleasantly happy to help all of us out.
Okay, well, what is the plan here?
Okay, so now that I've got your hair all smoothed out, just some face framing, give it a little bit of movement so it's dancing. And some soft layers as well.
And so you mentioned earlier that you've been doing hair since you were, what, 13?
I started cutting hair when I was 13 years old, yes. My mom was part of the MC College crew back in '75, so I graduated in '95, and my mom taught me how to cut hair until I went to the school. All right, Hillary, look at you. Your hair is absolutely smoothed out. Your layers are done. We've cleaned it all up. Took a little bit of your ends off. As you can see, here is our finished product of Hillary all dolled up.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to MC College and CBC and Ragged Ass Barbers.
Check out this moment in Yellowknife. You see that man dashing into the Explorer Hotel right in the city's downtown, and moments later, you will see why. A bear ambles by the front door of the hotel. The Explorer posted this video with a reminder as the people left, the animals came back. So if you are still in Yellowknife as an essential worker, be careful. And that is Northbeat for tonight. Now, the NWT government is holding a news conference to update everyone on the fire situation tonight. That's in about a half an hour at 7 p.m. You can watch it on our website, cbc.ca/north. We are all thinking of our friends and colleagues right now who are far from home. I hope you have a safe weekend, get some rest. We'll be back with you on Monday from Edmonton. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts.